Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to another action figure review, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Bandai Movie Monster Series Dream 5 box set, consisting of King Ghidorah 1964, Kamacuras 1967, Gabera and Gearus 1972, and Mechagodzilla 1974. Now, King Ghidorah comes from the 1964 film, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, which I really enjoy. I really like the commentary of, international relations between different countries, and is overall just a very, entertaining movie. I do like it a lot. It's not my absolute favorite in the Showa era, but it's still a very enjoyable movie in my opinion. Kamacuras comes from the 1967 film, Son of Godzilla, which, I like. I don't really have any strong opinions on it. It's a fine enough movie on its own. Don't really have a lot to say there. Gabera comes from the 1969 film, All Monsters Attack, which, a lot of people consider that movie to be one of the worst Godzilla movies ever made. And not only do I disagree with that, but I will go as far as to say that, unironically, it is one of my favorites. I absolutely love that movie to death. I really like the commentary of, the living conditions of lower class citizens in Japan at the time. It's very imaginative, literally, all the monster stuff takes place in, you know, kid's imagination, and in real life, he's, getting kidnapped by burglars and stuff like that. It's a very entertaining movie, and I really like it, unironically, I think it's great. If you like the Showa era Gamera movies like I do, then All Monsters Attack is, you're gonna like that movie. Anguirus here comes from the 1972 film Godzilla vs. Gigan, which was the first Showa-era Godzilla movie that I've ever seen, and that movie means a lot to me. It's not perfect. There is way too much stock footage, but overall, it's still an enjoyable movie. I like it a lot. And then Mechagodzilla here comes from the 1974 film Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which I've talked about before, but I like Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. I really like that, I mentioned this in my review for the movie monster series Godzilla 1974, but it has a really nice, nature versus machine thing going on, but it also has, a really nice, science versus, religion thing going on as well. And it's also just a really entertaining movie. So, overall, all of these movies that these guys come from, I'd say are pretty good, Godzilla, or Son of Godzilla is probably my least favorite out of the five here, but still, all these movies, they're between really good and watchable. So, yeah. Anyway, so this box set here, so back in 2023, Bandai put out a poll, between 10 monsters, and whichever 5 monsters got the most votes would be made into this box set. Of course, the winners are, what you see here. I'll put up a picture of, what the other, what the actual poll looked like and what the other candidates looked like. So, just to give you an idea of what it looked like, And for the most part, I'm pretty happy with all these guys winning. The only one who I wasn't really too crazy about was Kamacuras. I don't hate Kamacuras or anything. I just would have preferred Rodan, 1964, and Mothra, Showa Mothra. I don't know if it was Mothra 1964 or 1961, but either way, there were other options, and I would have preferred one of those two, but still, I'm happy with what we have. So, yeah, I don't really have a whole lot else to say, so after almost 4 minutes, let's just get right into this. So, because this is a box set, unfortunately, the figures in this set will not come with tags like traditional movie Monster Series figures, which is unfortunate. I like the tags, I think they're a nice novelty, Even though I take them off, I still like having them, so that part is a little disappointing, but I'm totally fine because the box that these figures come in looks great. I love this artwork here of, all of the monsters in this set. I think the artwork here is really well done. And I'll put up more, higher quality, because this is a really big box, right? It's almost too big to, fit in frames. So I'll put up, better quality pictures to, show you what the box looks like. And, yeah, I do really like this box. Again, it's big. I don't know where I'm going to put it, but still, the packaging here is really cool, and I absolutely love it. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the packaging. Now, going back to the figures themselves, to start, we'll take a look at the paint, starting with King Ghidorah here. And the entirety of King Ghidorah is casted in this gold vinyl, which I think looks nice. And the only real bits of paint on this figure are going to be in the heads. The eyes here are going to be painted red with black pupils, and each of his manes are going to be painted gray, which looks nice, and that's pretty much it. You know, there's not really any other bits of paint. The toenails aren't painted, the teeth aren't painted, you know, nothing else is really painted, but I'm okay with that. You know, he looks fine. So overall, I'd say the painting on King Ghidorah gets a pass. Now moving on to Kamacuras here, we can see that he is casted in this brownish-reddish coloration, which looks close to the movie. His eyes are going to be painted a nice metallic orange with a little bit of like a silver finish in the center of his eyes there, which looks nice. His antennas are going to be painted a whitish-yellowish coloration with a little bit of white in his face, which looks nice. His toenails, like praying mantises have in real life, they are going to be painted the same color as his antennas, so they are going to be a yellowish-whitish coloration. And lastly, the wings on this figure are going to be painted a brighter shade of reddish-brown than the actual figure itself, with some black stripes, which looks nice. The painting on Kamacuras, I think, looks good, so the painting on Kamacuras, I'd say, gets a pass. Now, moving on to Gabera, and it's pretty much the same. You know, different colors, but simple. It's all it really needs to be. Gabera here is casted in this green coloration. We can see that he has a nice bronze coloration on his torso and on his neck there, which looks nice. His nails, both his toenails and his fingernails, are going to be painted yellow. His hair is going to be painted an orangish, yellowish coloration. His eyes here are going to be painted white with what looks to be like orangish, like reddish, brownish pupils, kind of. I'm looking at this figure from a distance. I'll put up like more in-depth pictures in the video, but from what I can tell, it looks like that the pupils are painted orange, which looks all right. His horns there on the top of his head are going to be painted the same color as his nails. And lastly, his mouth is going to be painted a nice brown, and his teeth are going to be perfectly white. Gabera brushes his teeth. He might bully Godzilla's son, but he takes care of his teeth, and that's pretty respectable. So, overall, the painting on Gabera, I think, looks good. So, the painting on Gabera, again, I'd say gets a pass. Now, moving on to Anguirus. We can see that the entirety of Anguirus is casted in this brown vinyl, which I think looks really nice. His back, carapace thing, whatever you want to call it, is going to be painted a whitish, kind of brownish coloration, which I think looks nice. The horns on the top of his head and on his nose are going to be painted brown. And the nails on all of his legs are going to be painted a whitish, pinkish coloration, which I think looks nice. His eyes are going to be painted white with brown pupils, and his teeth are going to be painted white as well. Again, just like Gabera, Anguirus brushes his teeth, and that's really nice. And that's pretty much it for the painting on. And overall, I'd say, again, the painting gets a pass. Overall, so far, the painting on these guys have been great. Now, moving on to Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla is casted in this metallic gray coloration, which I think looks nice. I think the painting here could have been a little stronger. Like, there are bits on this figure that are, like, a slightly darker shade of gray than, like, the rest of the figure, but it still looks fine, but I wish the painting here popped out a little bit more. There are two gold dots. I don't know what you'd call those, but he has a couple of yellow bits on his torso there. On the side of his head, he is going to have a bit of red, and his eyes are going to be painted orange. And that's pretty much it for Mechagodzilla. Again, the painting I think could have been better, but as is, I still think it looks fine. If I can forgive the Bandai Movie Monster Series Kiryu 2002, then I can definitely forgive Mechagodzilla here. So, Mechagodzilla, I'd say gets 3/4 of a pass. And that's pretty much it for the painting on these figures, and overall, it's not bad. I like the painting here, like, on each of these figures. They're all great in their own respective ways. Again, Mechagodzilla could have been a little stronger, but overall, I like the painting. So overall, I'd say the painting on these figures, like, as a whole, gets a full pass. Now, we'll take a look at the articulation, and these are all Movie Monster Series figures, so I don't really have a whole lot to say that hasn't really been said before. So, starting with King Ghidorah, he only has articulation in his legs, which is fine, you know. It would have been nice if his wings had articulation, but more on that when I talk about the sculpt. But as is, I'm fine with the amount of articulation King Ghidorah has. Like, the heads would have been a little tricky to do if they had, like, articulation at, like, the base of the necks, but regardless, I'm totally fine with King Ghidorah only having articulation in his feet. So overall, King Ghidorah's articulation, I'd say gets a pass. Now moving on to Kamacuras here, he has 3 points of articulation. Both of his pincers can move in this clip that I'm showing you right now, and his head can move a full 360 degrees. It would have been nice if his legs can move, but his legs are actually made of a different material from the rest of the body, so I'm totally fine with how Kamacuras is. So, as a whole, Kamacuras gets a pass. Gabera only has articulation in his arms, which is a little disappointing. You know, like, I could see how it would be hard to balance this figure if he had articulation in the legs, so that, like, I'm fine with, but I don't know, maybe something at the head, maybe something at the waist, you know, something. You know, just the arms. It's a little disappointing, but it's still fine. So, Gabera's articulation, I'd say gets 3/4 of a pass. Now, moving on to Anguirus here. He has 5 points of articulation. All 4 of his legs can move about in this clip that I'm showing off now. And his tail can move 360 degrees as well, though I wouldn't recommend doing it because a certain, there was a bit where one of the spikes on his tail and one of the spikes on his back kind of rub against each other, and I wouldn't do that because it might damage the figure, but still, you can theoretically have his tail move 360 degrees. So, Anguirus, I'd say gets a pass. It would have been nice if he had head articulation, but as is, it's still good. He gets a pass. Now, moving on to Mechagodzilla. Now, Mechagodzilla here is the most disappointing for me because he only has articulation in his arms. You know, no leg articulation, no head articulation, just his arms. And I think that is very disappointing, you know. Like, you know, after coming from, like, this is, like, an older figure, but that, movie monster series Mechagodzilla 1975 had, you know, leg articulation, arm articulation, and even head articulation, which was great. But here it's just the arms, and I think that's just a little disappointing, which on its own is, like, it's a letdown, but it's also weird because, like, his tail isn't flush with his feet, so, like, his tail, like, sort of, like, sticks downwards more, so, like, the way the figure is, it kind of looks like he's standing on his tippy toes, and I'm not a big fan of that look. I wish he had articulation in his legs. The head didn't need articulation, but the legs would have been nice. Apparently, from what I've been told, and from what I've heard online, this figure is actually a blown-up version of that Bandai America, like, 5-inch Mechagodzilla that they're selling in Target right now, which is understandable, but, again, I feel like they could have added more joints, but I digress. Anyway, overall, besides Mechagodzilla, I'm pretty fine with the articulation on all of these figures. So overall, the articulation here, I'd say gets a full pass, minus Mechagodzilla, who gets, like, you know what? I'm going to say he gets between, like, 1/4 of a pass and 1/2 a pass. I'm going to give him a pretty low score because, again, I really wish he had more articulation. But as a whole, the set, I'd say overall the articulation of the set as a whole gets a pass. Now, we'll take a look at the sculpt, and overall the sculpting on these figures I think look great. I think they look very spot on to what we see in each of their respective movies, you know. Nothing, you know, the proportions look good, nothing looks too big or too small or too out of place. I will say Gabera does have some really big feet, but I do believe that, you know, that's accurate to the film itself, so I'm not going to knock Gabera any points. The only complaint that I have is with King Ghidorah, and that's the position of his wings. So, in all of, like, the promotional images for this set, King Ghidorah is shown to have, like, his wings, like, you know, open, like, you know, how he does in the movies, you know, like, that's what people associate King Ghidorah with, you know, his wings being, like, out like that. But here, they're just kind of tucked behind his back, and I'm not a big fan of that look, you know, like, this would be fine on its own, but, like, the promotional image for this figure had him with, like, his spread wings, and it looked really nice. But here, I'm just not a big fan of this look. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was just to fit this figure in the box or whatever, but I'm sorry, as is, I'm not a big fan of how King Ghidorah looks. And earlier in the articulation, when I was talking about how I wish King Ghidorah had, articulation in his wings, I bring that up because the Bandai movie monster series Mecha King Ghidorah has articulation in the wings, where, like, if you rotate them, they can be tucked behind his back, similarly to this figure, but you could also rotate them to have them spread out like they're supposed to be. And I wish that was the case for this figure, but unfortunately it's not, and I'm kind of stuck with this look. I know there are ways to fix this that I've seen online, but... Well, actually, there is no but. I probably could try that, but it does seem like a lot of work to do, if I'm being honest. Spoiler alert, Bandai does plan on releasing each of these figures individually, and if they, if they did release King Ghidorah with fixed wings, I would definitely buy it, maybe. But as far as, like, this look, what we got in this box set, I'm not a big fan of that look. I even took, like, a hair blow dryer and tried heating it up, and it opened up a little bit, but not a lot. And again, I'm not too crazy about how the wings look here. Again, it's such a minor detail, I know, but I'm sorry, I just prefer King Ghidorah with his wings spread out rather than this look here, but I digress. Besides that, though, the sculpting here is still great. King Ghidorah still looks great, his heads look great, and overall, the sculpting on these figures, I think, look great. So, overall, I'd say the sculpting here gets a pass. Even with King Ghidorah's, less than stellar wings and Mechagodzilla standing on his tippy toes, the sculpting's great. So, yeah, definitely gets a pass. Now, we'll take a look at the detailing. And the detailing on these figures, overall, I think look great. So, starting with King Ghidorah, most of this figure is covered with really nice looking scales. Everything here is just detailed very nicely. Everything here is very nicely defined. All the musculature in the legs and everything like that looks great. And even, like, the underside of the necks have a lot of really nice creasings as well. The heads have a lot of really nice detailing too. Like, the manes are detailed really nicely, and there's just a lot of detail in the faces here that I really like. So overall, the detailing on King Ghidorah I think looks great. Definitely gets a pass. Now taking a look at Kamacuras here, we can see that there is a lot of really nice detailing here. All, like, the little, like, bumps and ridges, really gives off that, like, insect sort of look. I think the exoskeleton here looks great. And even, like, the bits of fur on this figure, again, I think is detailed really nicely, especially in the legs here, because they're not made of vinyl, as I mentioned at the start of this video. The legs are actually made of a harder plastic to better support this figure, and I think that allows for more, like, in-depth, like, fur detailing, and I think it looks great. The wings have a lot of nice detailing, and overall, the eyes look great, and overall, like, the detailing on this figure, Kamacuras, I think, looks great as well. So again, Kamacuras' detailing gets a pass. Now taking a look at Gabera, all of, like, the scales on him looks very warty, and just, it looks gross, but in a good way. Like, the detailing here is very nice. Everything here is very nicely defined. The detailing on his torso looks great, and even his face has a lot of really nice detailing here that I like. So, again, the detailing on Gabera looks great, so Gabera definitely gets a pass in that regard. Going to Anguirus, the same thing, just a lot of, like, the scales on Anguirus are going to be smaller, but still, like, everything here is going to be detailed very nicely, like, all, like, the detailing on, like, the forelimbs there, like, on the torso, and even on the tail. Just a lot of really nice detailing here that I really like. So, again, Anguirus definitely gets a pass as far as articulation, or detailing goes, excuse me. But lastly, going to Mechagodzilla here. Mechagodzilla also has a lot of really nice detailing here. All of the panels and all of, like, the little bolts and everything. A lot of really nice mechanical detailing on this figure that just really looks nice. Like, the arms have some nice detailing, and the torso just, again, all of those, like, metallic, like, panels and everything like that. Looks really good. So, overall, Mechagodzilla gets a pass as far as detailing goes as well. And in case you can tell, all these guys have really nice detailing. So, overall for the set, the detailing here, I'd say, definitely gets a pass. Now, we'll do some size comparisons. To start, here we have the Godzilla Store exclusive Bandai Movie Monster Series Godzilla, 1964. And these two look really nice together. I really like how this looks, so there they are. Here we have the Bandai Movie Monster Series Godzilla Store exclusive Manila, 1967. and he looks okay with Gabera. He's a little too big, but still, like, these two scale nicely. Here we have the Bandai movie monster series Godzilla 1974. And again, these two scale really nicely as well. And of course, here we have some hand sanitizer. And here we have Dr. Billy Grant, if I can get him to stand. There we go. Dr. Billy Grant. So at the end of the day, should you get this box set? Now, before I get into that, I do want to point out that Bandai does plan on releasing each of these figures individually. I mentioned this before, but that is the plan. We don't know when. There's no confirmed release date or anything like that. We just know that Bandai does eventually plan on releasing these guys individually. So if there are certain figures in the set that you don't want, or just, just one specific figure that you want and don't really care for the others, then I'd say wait for that. But as of now, I really like this box set. I'm mostly happy with it. There's some minor things that I don't like. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of the way King Ghidorah's wings are positioned, and I feel like Mechagodzilla could have been improved upon as far as the painting and articulation goes, but overall, I'm still mostly happy here. I do really like these figures, the painting looks nice, the sculpting, the detailing, everything here looks great. And again, Mechagodzilla's painting and articulation could have been better, but I still like Mechagodzilla. Like, he's my least favorite in the set here, but still, I do like Mechagodzilla on his own. Like, he's a nice figure, but yeah. So overall, I do really like this box set. It's not perfect, but I like it. So I do recommend that you pick this up. Now, as far as price tags go, now this is when things, this set is a Godzilla store exclusive. So as I've mentioned before, you have two options of getting this set. You could either get this guy from the American Godzilla store. You're going to have to wait a little longer. I think this set comes out next month as far as like a US release goes. But this set came out in December, either the 22nd or the 23rd, a couple days before Christmas. But yeah, this figure did come out in Japan around that time. And I imported this set from, Japan with Bai, which is a little more expensive. Well, actually, no, because MSRP for this guy at the Japanese Godzilla store, I believe, was like $120, $130, somewhere between there. And the shipping was like an additional $20 to $30. So in total, I did have to pay $160, which is not cheap. But this figure is actually exactly $160 right now at the American Godzilla store, without any shipping or anything like that. So it all depends on how quickly you want this set. If you want it in a hurry like I did, you could just import it, which would cost more, but still, like, that is an option if you want it sooner. But if you'd rather pay less and wait longer, then there's the American Godzilla store. Again, just like with the Bandai Movie Monster Series Godzilla 1994, I shipped the set with ECMS Express, which took their very sweet time to get this to my house. So if you do plan on importing this set, then please do not use ECMS. But overall, I do recommend picking up this set. It's not without its faults. There are some things that could have been improved overall. But, as a whole, I'm happy. I'm happy with this. And, when they eventually release these figures individually, hopefully they'll release King Ghidorah with, like, fixed wings. And if they did that, I might buy it. But I digress. Anyway, this video has been very long. This video took a lot out of me, a lot of recording, and there's going to be a lot of editing. I haven't edited this yet as of me recording this, but there's going to be a lot of editing, and this video is going to be a lot. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go play Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace, Zack out.